I'm a 30-year-old woman, and it's been nearly 7 years since I packed up my life in the US and moved to the UK. I was able to claim British citizenship through my dad, who had originally left the UK for America years ago. That's where he met my mom, who had fled her home country in South America to escape political persecution. She doesn't talk about those years much, and out of respect, I never push her to. After finishing college, I spent a few years bouncing around Asia and the Middle East, teaching English in underdeveloped and sometimes downright dangerous communities. Those years were eye-opening, but eventually, I felt the pull to return to my European roots and decided to settle down in the UK permanently. The adjustment wasn't smooth. I still remember stepping off the plane at Heathrow with just 2 suitcases and a backpack, not knowing a single soul except for a few distant relatives who lived far up north. I scrambled to find a place in London and ended up in a tiny flat that cost way more than it should have, but it was all I could get on short notice. Those first few months were all about survival, figuring out how the tube worked, trying not to look lost, and learning that fancy a cuppa just meant do you want tea? I felt silly for asking, but I genuinely didn't know. To get by, I took on whatever jobs I could land. I poured lattes as a barista in a coffee shop near Piccadilly, played hostess at a restaurant in Covent Garden, and even walked pampered dogs for wealthy families in Kensington. The pay barely covered rent, but it was enough to keep me afloat while I searched for something steady. Eventually, I lucked out and found a decent job that actually valued my odd collection of experience. The people there were kind enough, though I never formed any close friendships. I've always been proud of my mixed background and the way I've been able to soak up different cultures throughout my life. Back home, people usually assumed I was white until I explained my heritage, which often sparked interesting conversations. In the UK, though, the question I hear most often is, "Where are you really from?" The first few times I brushed it off, but after the 100th time, it started to wear on me. Still, I tried not to let it get under my skin. A few years ago, everything changed when I met the man who's now my husband. We crossed paths at a friend's birthday party. He was tall, slightly awkward, and spent the whole evening cracking awful puns that somehow made me laugh. At first, I thought he was just being polite, but then he asked for my number before the night ended. Our first few dates went better than I expected, and before long, we were inseparable. After a couple of years together, we tied the knot in a small, intimate ceremony. Not long after, we bought a house in the countryside. While the mortgage paperwork was being sorted, his family generously invited us to live with them. It was a huge adjustment for me, but honestly, I didn't mind. I'd grown close to his family by then, especially his younger brother Matt, who felt like the sibling I never had. From the very beginning, his parents welcomed me with open arms. His mom would fuss over meals, always trying to cook things she thought I'd enjoy, though her attempt at tacos, with ketchup standing in for salsa, still makes me laugh. His dad loved peppering me with questions about America and my travels, sometimes repeating the same ones because he'd forget he already asked. I never minded. Their warmth made me feel like I truly belonged. My husband and I were there for Matt through his ups and downs, especially the messy breakups. Once, a girl wouldn't stop showing up at his job after he ended things, and we had to help him figure out how to shut it down without drama. Another time, he dated someone who turned out to be part of some bizarre cult-like group trying to recruit him. Looking back, we laugh about it, but at the time it was unsettling. We spent most weekends together, whether it was movie nights, board games, or just hanging out. Matt quickly became one of my closest friends too. I'll never forget the night we stayed up until 4 a.m. battling through a brutal video game level while my husband snored away on the couch. Matt's the kind of person who would drop everything to pick you up if your car broke down, no questions asked. Eventually, Matt met Vicky at a work event, maybe a Christmas party or someone's farewell, I can't quite recall. He was over the moon about her and constantly texted my husband for advice on what to say. When we finally met her, we thought she was exactly what he needed, sweet, down-to-earth, and fun. Our first real night out together was at a pub quiz, where she blew us away with her knowledge of 80s music. She even brought homemade brownies, which were pretty good despite having nuts, something I usually can't stand. She seemed to fit in effortlessly with our little circle, and I was genuinely happy for Matt. But as time went on, small things about her started to unsettle me. At first, I brushed them off because I didn't want to stir up trouble with my husband's family. It began with comments that felt off. She'd remark that I didn't sound American or say things like, "You're pretty for a Latina." I'd laugh it away, not sure if she was being ignorant or intentionally rude. One night at a cocktail bar near my in-laws' house, she crossed a line. When the waiter came to take our orders, she pointed at me and announced loudly, "I'll have anything that's not as foreign as her accent." Everyone gave an awkward chuckle while I forced a smile, but inside I felt stung. Another time over dinner, I casually mentioned my Latina heritage, and she shot back with, "Well, at least you're not a dirty Indian." The words nearly knocked me out of my chair. We're all fine with a bit of dark humor now and then, But this was something else entirely. It was so abrupt that I think half the table wasn't sure if they even heard her right. We gave nervous laughs, clearly uncomfortable, and my mother-in-law quickly steered the conversation toward the neighbor's new car. Later that night, I asked my husband if he thought her comment was out of line. He admitted it was strange but suggested maybe she just had a twisted sense of humor. I let it go, though it lingered in the back of my mind. The most shocking moment came after I took my husband to Turkey for his birthday. I sent a video to our family group chat, him sunbathing by the pool with the hauntingly beautiful call to prayer ringing out from the Blue Mosque. To me, it captured the magic of Istanbul perfectly. Vicky's reply? That sound would freak me out, it's like a suicide bomber. I could understand how her comment might have gone over other people's heads, but I knew exactly what she was getting at. My stomach turned hearing her make a joke like that about something so deeply meaningful to millions of people. Sure, she'd never been to the Middle East, but I had, and I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. So instead of snapping back, I decided to try educating her. I recorded a voice note explaining what the call to prayer was, why it holds such powerful spiritual and cultural meaning, and how it's actually considered beautiful. I even sent her a couple of articles about its history and how skilled muezzins dedicate their lives to delivering it with precision and artistry. I did my best to keep my tone patient and informative, not confrontational. Her response? Just a dry LOL okay followed by some random comment about a clothing sale. It was obvious she didn't care. That became the pattern with her. Anytime I shared something about my travels or my background, she either ignored me or threw in some uncomfortable joke that made me wish I'd kept my mouth shut. One dinner really stuck with me. I'd made empanadas from scratch using my grandmother's recipe, something that took me hours. I proudly brought them to the table, hoping to share a little piece of my culture. Vicky took one bite, then laughed and asked if I'd used dog meat, like they do in your country. I was floored. I couldn't even find words at first. Thankfully, my mother-in-law jumped in quickly, saying they were delicious. But the damage had been done. I laughed it off at the moment to keep things from getting awkward, but inside I was crushed. For a while, I pushed those moments aside. I'd see her at family gatherings and keep things polite but distant, never mean, but never warm either. My husband once suggested I try spending some one-on-one time with her to build a connection, but after comments like that, I just couldn't bring myself to. Life distracted me anyway. A solid month went by without any run-ins with her, mostly because we were buried in the chaos of buying our house. First, there were problems with the survey, then the sellers tried to back out, then they changed their minds again. The whole process was a roller coaster, and it meant we had to stay longer with my in-laws. Thankfully, they were incredibly kind about it. My father-in-law even offered to chip in for renovations as a wedding gift, which was unbelievably generous. On top of that, work was eating me alive. My boss had dumped a massive project with an impossible deadline on me, so I was pulling late nights at the office almost every day. My husband would sometimes swing by with dinner, which was sweet, but I was basically running on fumes for weeks. Between that and the stress of the house, I had zero energy left to deal with Vicky's nonsense. That changed yesterday. I hit my breaking point with her so-called jokes. Our family group chat is usually harmless fun. My husband spams dad jokes that make everyone groan, my mother-in-law sends animal videos, and Matt fills it with sports updates. Vicky, though, doesn't seem to know how to read the room. She'd drop in memes that were flat-out offensive. Once she sent one about disabled people that was just cruel, nobody laughed, we all just ignored it. Another time she shared a political meme that mocked immigrants. My husband actually messaged Matt privately to tell him it wasn't cool, but as far as I know, Matt never confronted her. Then came yesterday's bomb. My phone buzzed while I was making lunch, and when I opened the notification, I froze. Vicky had posted a meme of a massive raft crammed with immigrants out on the ocean. The caption read, "Where's Jaws when you need him?" I stood in the kitchen, staring at my screen in disbelief. My parents were both immigrants. My mom literally risked her life fleeing her home country. And here was this woman making a joke about those same kinds of people drowning or being torn apart by sharks. It felt personal, like she'd aimed it directly at me. My husband thought it crossed the line too, and even his mom reacted with a shocked face emoji, which meant a lot, since she's usually all about keeping things light. My husband sat at the kitchen table, frowning at his phone, and finally looked up and said, "That's really inappropriate." Meanwhile, I was shaking with anger. My hands trembled so badly I spilled coffee across the counter. Every part of me wanted to blast her in the group chat and call her out as the bigot she was. But my husband calmed me down and convinced me not to start a family-wide war. So instead, I took a few deep breaths, snapped a screenshot of the meme, and slid into her DMs. I told her straight up that the joke was disgusting, especially considering she knew both my parents were immigrants and that my mom had to flee her country to survive. I explained how making fun of people risking their lives on the sea wasn't edgy humor. It was cruel. What she sent wasn't just a tasteless joke, it was cruel and dehumanizing. As soon as I called her out, she started firing off apologies, claiming she didn't know. That was hard to believe. We'd known each other for a year, and this wasn't the first time the subject had come up. Either she was lying, or she was clueless. Honestly, I think it's both. Whenever it suits her, she suddenly forgets these things. She spammed me with messages like, "I'm so sorry, I didn't think it was just a meme someone forwarded me. I didn't create it, and I'd never want to hurt you personally." Notice the wording. She was more worried about the idea of offending me personally than she was about the fact she'd joked about human beings dying. That tells you a lot about her character, if you ask me. She quickly deleted the meme from the chat, along with the little gif she'd attached of herself giggling after my mother-in-law reacted with a shocked emoji. But by then the damage was done. Everyone had seen it. Everyone knew what she was comfortable sharing. I didn't answer her right away, I needed space to calm down and process. My husband suggested we go for a walk, which actually helped clear my head. But when I came back, my phone was buzzing with more messages from her asking if I was okay and begging to talk. I still wasn't ready. This morning, I woke up to a long, dramatic paragraph from her. She said she was devastated that she upset me, that she loves me, and that I'm like a sister to her. The whole thing was packed with emotional language about how much she values our relationship, how she'd never intentionally hurt me, and how she's trying to educate herself and do better. Of course, she didn't actually say what she was doing to educate herself, just vague promises. I can appreciate someone apologizing, but honestly? It gives me the ick to be around anyone who thinks it's funny to joke about people dying simply because of where they're from. That's not harmless humor. That's a window into how she really views certain groups of people less than human, not worthy of dignity or respect. I still haven't replied. Part of me feels like I should give her the benefit of the doubt, but another part knows this isn't a one-off. It's a pattern. Every time she said something racist, she's played dumb when called out, like she has no idea why it might be offensive. My husband thinks I should at least acknowledge her apology so things don't spiral into even more awkwardness, especially since we're still living with his parents and see Matt and Vicky all the time. He suggested I tell her I need space to process before we move forward. That sounded reasonable, but I still wasn't sure. I vented to a friend from work who's also an immigrant, and she was livid on my behalf. She told me flat out that I don't owe Vicky anything, family connection or not. Her advice was to be direct, tell Vicky exactly how her jokes make me feel, and draw a line that if it happens again, I won't stick around her. So now I'm stuck wondering, would I be the asshole if I flat out called her a racist or a bigot the next time we meet and started distancing myself from her? Or should I just take her apology at face value and let it slide? I hate the idea of causing problems in the family while we're living under my in-laws' roof, but I also don't want to keep brushing this off the way I've done before. Edit, I realized I left out context earlier. We're currently living with my in-laws while our house purchase gets finalized. Some people were confused, so there's the clarification. Update, a lot of people asked why I didn't call her out sooner, like the very first time she made a racist comment. Honestly, I think I was just trying to keep the peace. When you're the outsider in a family, it's hard to know which battles to fight and when to bite your tongue. I didn't want to rock the boat too much while I was still finding my place. And for those saying I'm exaggerating, no. These comments weren't just a little off-color. They were blatantly racist. There's no context where joking about sharks eating immigrants is British humor. My husband is British, and even he was disgusted. Since that post, I've had more time to think. I kept coming back to two things. First, if she truly saw me as a sister, she would have made an effort to know me, to understand my culture, instead of mocking it. Second, she's only apologizing because she got called out, not because she suddenly realized she was wrong. If nobody had said anything, I guarantee she'd still think those jokes were fine. I sat down with my husband again, and he told me he'll back me no matter what I decide. That meant a lot. I also gave my mom a call for advice, without laying out every detail, but she helped me put things into perspective. When I called my mom for advice, I didn't go into every detail because I didn't want to stress her out. She just reminded me that I don't have to be friends with everyone, but sometimes you do need to find a way to peacefully coexist with people you don't like. At first, I ignored Vicky's apology. But by Sunday, when she and Matt were planning to come over for our family dinner, she texted me again, asking if we were okay. The only thing I could bring myself to reply was, "I accept your apology." I worded it that way on purpose. I wanted to be honest without being hostile, but I also wanted her to understand that just because she said sorry, it didn't mean things instantly went back to normal. I'm not sure what I expected her reaction to be. Maybe I thought she'd recognize that I needed some space. Instead, she took my response as a personal insult. Before I knew it, she was crying to Matt, who then called their mom to complain about how mean I was and how they were nervous about coming to dinner because they thought I might create a scene or ruin the mood. Can you believe that? She makes racist comments, shares offensive memes, tosses out a half-hearted apology, and somehow I'm the villain for not bending over backwards to forgive her immediately. I told my husband to make it clear to his mom that I wasn't about to cause a spectacle in their home. They'd been kind enough to let us stay there while we were in between houses, and I wasn't going to disrespect that. I'd accepted Vicky's apology and promised to be civil. To me, being civil meant if she spoke to me, I'd respond politely, but I wasn't going to go out of my way to strike up conversations with her. Honestly, I thought that was more than fair under the circumstances. When my husband spoke with his mom, she said she understood, though I think she was mostly trying to keep the peace. She brushed it off with something like, "Families say stupid things sometimes," which wasn't exactly the validation I'd hoped for. Still, at least she didn't pressure me into pretending nothing had happened. The day of the dinner came, and I was anxious from the moment I woke up. My stomach was in knots, and I kept running through possible scenarios. What if Vicky tried to corner me? What if Matt made a snide comment? My husband suggested we show up late to limit the awkward small talk, so before heading over we stopped at a friend's place. She just adopted a little terrier mix puppy, and honestly, spending an hour with that dog was the best therapy I could have asked for. By the time we left for dinner, I felt calmer. When we arrived at my in-laws, Matt and Vicky were already on the couch. The moment I walked in, Matt had this smug, uncomfortable smirk plastered on his face, the kind you give when you can't stand someone but have to fake politeness. It shocked me because I thought he and I were close. Vicky muttered a tiny hi in a voice barely above a whisper, then stared at the floor like she was in a contest with it. That was fine by me. I didn't make eye contact with her the entire night. My father-in-law tried to smooth things over with drinks and chatter about football, but the tension was thick. At the table, I kept myself busy making conversation with everyone else. I talked gardening plans with my mother-in-law, debated a Netflix show with my father-in-law, and asked my husband about a project at work. I was warm and engaged with them, but when it came to Matt and Vicky, I kept my distance. I answered when Matt asked questions but never started conversation. With Vicky, I didn't say a single word unless she spoke directly to me, and the only time she did was to ask me to pass the salt. Meanwhile, Vicky sat across the table looking like she was auditioning for the role of world's saddest dinner guest. She barely touched her food, sighed dramatically every few minutes, and forced these weak, pitiful smiles whenever the rest of us laughed at something. It was obvious she wanted everyone to feel sorry for her. Eventually, I noticed her texting under the table. Matt is not exactly subtle, and caught him nodding at her screen. A few minutes later, they made up some excuse about having to get up early the next day, which was laughable because Matt never wakes up early for anything. They left quickly, and I knew exactly why. My in-laws knew too. After they left, they pulled my husband aside and asked why I couldn't just let it go. My mother-in-law kept saying we're all family and forgiveness is part of that. She didn't understand that being on the receiving end of racist jokes isn't something you just brush off. My husband did his best to defend me, pointing out that I'd been civil and hadn't caused a scene. He reminded them that I was the one who'd been hurt by Vicky's words, not the other way around. But they seemed more focused on preserving the comfort of their dinner table than addressing the actual harm. The next morning, my father-in-law pulled me aside while I was making coffee. He said he knew I was upset, but for Matt's sake, I should try to move on. He told me he didn't think Vicky was a bad person, just a bit stupid sometimes and prone to speaking before thinking. I just nodded and said I'd consider it, but inside I was exhausted. Why did it always have to be me who took the high road? Vicky has always struck me as the kind of person who thrives on playing the victim, and now she's twisting things so that I look like the problem. Classic Darvo: deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. She's the one who made the racist comments, yet somehow she's got people feeling sorry for her while I'm painted as the difficult one. Now the whole family seems to think it's up to me to fix this mess, even though I wasn't the one who dropped a disgusting meme in the group chat. My husband supports me privately, but he doesn't want to stir more conflict with his family, especially while we're still living under their roof. So for now, I'm just keeping my distance from Vicky and doing my best not to make it obvious to my in-laws. It's draining, trying to manage everyone else's feelings while my own are brushed off as an overreaction. Edit: a few people asked if I've tried talking to Matt directly. I haven't yet, mostly because I worry he'll just jump to defending Vicky and make things worse. Maybe that's the next step, but honestly, I'm not sure I have the energy for it.